promise you something really scary.
Attention. Do I have everybody's attention now?
Hey, now it's overtime. I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm here with JD by God Oliva. How you doing, JD?
I love Sting, the original Sting theme song. It just warms my cold, dead heart every time I hear it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Well, I'm excited to get into this topic. I do have to apologize to the Patreon audience. JD and I were not able to record on Sunday for two reasons. The first one being it was Father's Day. We just weren't able to do it because of Father's Day. But I know me specifically, I had a ton of homework, dude. I just could not do anything on Sunday. I was in my office from like 5 till like 10:30 at night on Sunday night doing homework.
Dude, I got 9 hours of grad school. I just finished one of my classes today. Pretty stoked about that. So I got 6 hours left of grad school for the summer. So I get it, man. Like being a grown-up freaking sucks.
I know, man. And I'm really trying to push to graduate this year. I want to be done this year, and I want to be done with school forever this coming up year. So
I got the spring, and then the more school you take, the more you get paid. So like I just want to get this master's, because then it's master's plus, and then you keep racking up more money. We top out at master's plus 45. So the sooner I can get there, the better.
Yes. But hey, so what we're going to talk about right now, we're going to do episode 2 of Who Killed WCW, and then later this weekend, you guys are going to get episode 3 of Who Killed WCW. And it's funny you mentioned Eric Bischoff, because episode 2 was very much about rebuilding the Eric Bischoff brand and rebuilding his image, and him kind of passing the buck off onto Brad Siegel and all like AOL, Time Warner, and all those people for killing, and all the Turner execs for killing WCW, while taking a little bit of accountability. And here's the thing: when someone takes a little bit of accountability for something small that they did, and then points the fingers at all these other people, they're not actually taking accountability. They're trying to make you think that they're an honest person, that they're accountable for their actions, when in actuality they're still passing the buck. And that is what a coward does, and Eric Bischoff is the lying, grifting coward.
It's almost like we just had a conversation about Eric Bischoff being a gigantic grifter.
Yeah. We literally just got done talking about that. But yeah, so the whole episode, and I thought this episode wasn't as good as the first one. But it's because the bullshit detector just kind of started going off like crazy during this episode.
Yeah, I told you last week, or 2 weeks when we talked about this, that this show is going to be the Eric Bischoff Reclamation Project, because he's cool with those guys. And now those guys are in the Conrad crew. They're scumbag grifters too. Husney and whatever his name, like whoever those guys are, the Dark Side guys. No, man, now they might as well have an ad-free podcast, because they're just like that. Like, I don't recall Brad Siegel telling Eric Bischoff to spend $100 million or whatever it was on Kiss.
Yeah. Which I didn't really get a lot of coverage on this documentary.
Shockingly, you don't hear about all the amount of money Eric Bischoff wasted, or Megadeth. And I like Megadeth, but didn't need them on Nitro.
No, it didn't. It didn't really pop a rating. It didn't really sell any tickets. But here's the thing: is like what they didn't call Bischoff out on, and I wish they would have. But because Bischoff is a part of that clique now,
he's the producer.
They weren't going to. Bischoff very much, like, after a little bit, once they started rolling and getting famous, and all the money is rolling in, then it became like he is going to use WCW to get to do shit that he's always wanted to do. Right? Sturgis, South Dakota. Eric Bischoff very much into bike riding. Right? So what do? They have an outdoor show, which I thought Road Wild shows. I thought the visual was very cool, but that was very much an excuse for him to ride his motorcycle and hang out with some bikers and be part of the biker crew. And then he uses Turner's money, not his money, Turner's money, to spend $100 million or whatever it was on Kiss, to bring in Megadeth and all the other bullshit. And then and he's not being held accountable for that. The only thing that he's willing to take any type of accountability on is a couple of minor bad booking decisions, which has ultimately tanked the company, if you think about it.
No, 100%. Eric Bischoff, like you say, he got to do things he always wanted to do, and wrestling provided him those opportunities. Eric Bischoff always wanted to be a swing. Never mind. Um, I'll leave that one. I don't want to get sued. It's really a shame because, like you said, like you have this great quote that I can never ever get right about success and failure and masters and whatnot. I can never.
I'm gonna say it one more time, but
I can never remember it. Please.
Success has 100 fathers, but failure is an orphan.
There you go. I've already forgotten it. Like it's so accurate. And he is the biggest example of it. And he'll sit there and tell you what a genius he was for the NWO when all he did was lift a common Japanese wrestling trope.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? He was smart to do it, by the way.
Nothing wrong with lifting tropes. It's fine. But he doesn't act like that's what he did.
Yeah.
Like he acts like he came in with the invader storyline. When let's be honest, the idea of a foreign invader invading your turf and ruining your home is very much something that the Japanese people had to deal with in a little thing called World War II.
Yes.
That's why it's so ingrained in pro wrestling, because it's a major part of their culture. Right? That's why we've had a ton of invader storylines. Going back to like Antonio Inoki, what did he do? He slew the foreign invader every single week. Ricky Dozan, I'm gonna beat the American, right? That's what they do. And all they did in the 80s, right? When they started this stuff, the UWF invasions, it was the same thing. Oh, the outsiders are coming in to take our stuff. And because that's the Japanese story, is you get beat up and then you rise up again. Right? That's what they did. The problem was Eric Bischoff screwed up and forgot to do the rise up again part. They just had the NWO trample WCW. And then he forgot to I've devalued my company completely and told my fan base that my company sucks.
Yeah. He told NWO told everybody that WCW sucked. Mm-hmm. And the WCW was uncool. And they were the cool heels. And then so what does Bischoff do? He aligns himself with the NWO. And he was like, yes, I was with WCW, but I left them because they suck and they're uncool. And you guys shouldn't like them either. And then ultimately, people realize like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, they are pretty fucking cool. Like I do want to hang out with those guys. You know what I mean? Like X-Pac or Six, like he is super cool, right? Mm-hmm. And so like the fan base turned against WCW. It's almost like they should have renamed the whole company NWO after a while because everybody hated WCW at that point.
They tried that for a while. They tried to rebrand the company as WCW NWO, and no, it didn't work. No. But I mean, that was the whole thing. Is Eric Bischoff's genius idea was to destroy WCW. Well, mission accomplished. You incompetent idiot.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, so we talked about last week how 97 really we started to see the cracks in the foundation with Starrcade 97, right? And then early on in 1998 is when Thunder comes on. Whenever the creation of Thunder in the episode, I felt like they did do a good job of explaining how when Thunder not only watered down Nitro, watered down the overall product, but really Eric Bischoff was saying that they didn't give us any extra money for Thunder, and we didn't have the infrastructure in place to be able to do 2 primetime shows. So they asked us to do more, but did not give us more to be able to help with that. And I think that sucks. That is a fair point. But the first crack in the foundation was Starrcade 97. And I think that the next major crack in the foundation was the creation of Thunder, honestly.
Mm-hmm. But the problem is they were never creative enough to work around it.
Yeah.
And I get that. But at the same time, you didn't have to fly 1 million people into every Nitro. You could have booked it smarter so that you weren't spending that kind of money. The problem with Eric is that he willingly spent Turner's money because it wasn't his money, but he never thought about how to be smart with it because he just assumed that the faucet would stay out, would run forever. He never thought about how to be smart with his money. And that's the problem, is that he doesn't like saying, I wasted a lot of Turner money and made my bosses really mad. Yeah. You could have booked Thunder smarter. The original idea was to have split crews. They didn't do it. And I hate hearing this because I heard it with Collision too. When you launch another product, it waters down the product. It makes it not as good. That didn't happen when SmackDown started.
No, well,
nobody ever said SmackDown watered down Raw. And remember, we didn't get split crews for 2 years into the run of SmackDown. Mm-hmm. The first 2 years, and again, those are major success years in the WWF.
Well, we really didn't get it until WWF bought WCW. Uh-huh. That's when we really got it. Well, because then they had the talent, And then they had the infrastructure in place to have 2 separate writing crews. But the creation of SmackDown very much led Vince Russo to go to WCW because they wanted him to write a second show but not pay him more.
But that's the same thing Bischoff bitched about.
Yeah, same thing.
Vince figured it out.
Yeah,
I mean, say what you want about the rapist. He is a smart businessman.
well, yeah, he's a smart businessman, and he can lead people to do things, and
Yeah.
he can get people to perform at a high level and all those things. And that's what. Look, I don't get me started on Vince McMahon and his dark side, but he is a good leader, right? I don't want to compliment the guy, but as far as leadership skills, he can get talent and he can get people to work hard for him. And that is the mark of a good leader. That doesn't mean he is a moral human being, because he is not. He's a contemptible human being.
He's very good at manipulating people into doing what he wants them to do.
Yes, in more ways than one,
Mhm.
obviously.
Mhm.
But that is another thing about Eric Bischoff. He did not have the leadership skills.
He is not.
No, he is not. He very much, and I think the people were calling him out on this a little bit, that he wanted to be a part of the show. He wanted to be one of the boys. He wanted to be part of the crew. He didn't want to be a boss. He didn't want to be a leader, right? And that was and maybe it seemed like now, like looking back on it, he's probably thinking like, well, I wasn't technically the leader of the company. That was the Turner executives. But no, it's like, you were the guy in charge. You were the executive producer running the day-to-day operations. Everybody came to you. Like you had to lead this company into greatness, and you failed.
He had no problem. You watch those shows. You watch when he showed up and other things. He had no problem telling everybody he was the boss of WCW, and the only person he answered to was Ted Turner.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Now Harvey Schiller and some of these other people, they were higher up on the food chain than he was. So he technically did, but he could legitimately go right to Ted with his ideas, and he can get them approved.
But he said that all the time.
He did.
Like, he said it. And then now, but when it feels like, well, I really wasn't in charge. Like, I get so tired. Like, he blames the Turner people. He blames standards and practice, those things were all there when he was successful.
Yes. And here's the thing that episode 2 tried to paint. They continued to try to paint this picture that WCW executives hated WCW, which they did early on.
They did.
They legitimately did. Not everybody, but they legitimately did early on. But when they got hot, they all wanted to be a part of it. They wanted it to succeed. They were showing up to the events. You had Brad Siegler doing panels talking about the greatness of WCW and how many tickets they had sold. And him like legitimately like, hey, we got Goldberg. We have this major star. And I think that was the next focus, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But like him going out in public and bragging on the fact that they got this next big star that is going to be good for kids and things like that. They didn't hate WCW until they started to lose money by the tens of millions of dollars at a time, losing money. That's the only reason why they hated it.
Dennis Green. They had Dennis Green syndrome. They were who we thought they were. Like, they thought they were stupid. Then they were like, oh, maybe this isn't stupid. Nope, they're stupid. God damn it. We knew this. Like, that's exactly what it was.
But when they were losing money, they no longer liked it anymore, and they didn't love pro wrestling. So they were not going to go out of the way to try to save this company. They were fine getting rid of it. Absolutely. But when they were hot, everybody was on board. Everybody was on board. And they have evidence to prove that. One of the things that Eric tried to paint also was that he was part of them losing money was Turner essentially taking some of their revenue and moving it over into other opportunities. They did do that, and that there is evidence of that. But that's also part of being part of a unit, right? Like Turner's this big conglomerate, this big umbrella, and they can pull funds from any other pocket of money and put it into other pockets of money. In fact, I know that because, guys, I want to tell you, I'm now a corporate finance expert. I got a 96 on my midterm this week, so I feel like I'm capable of speaking on this. I go to Columbia Southern University, which is the Harvard of internet school. But like, when you're a human resource manager, right, and you're in charge of the budget, you have this big budget and you have these little bags of money everywhere, and then if one side is kind of uneven or whatever, you can pull from the other to help the other one out. That's how that works. If they were a singular company, it wouldn't have been that way, but they were part of a bigger unit.
And because WCW had been such a money loser, for its existence, all but 18 months of its entire existence, it was very easy to turn her to go, yeah, well, they always lose money, so just pass it on to this.
Yeah. That that wasn't a big deal, but I think the biggest thing about episode 2 and the biggest failure, one of the biggest failures of WCW was the fumbling of Goldberg. And we saw this, like, I'm not comparing, I am comparing Joe Hendry to Goldberg. Smaller scale, obviously, right? TNA works in front of bars. Goldberg's selling out the Georgia Dome, a big difference, right? But they had a guy and they went with him, and then there were other forces at play working behind the scenes to try to manipulate it and make sure that he failed. And that's exactly what happened to Goldberg, because he was 100% their biggest star.
I'm sorry, I had to tweet that you just compared Joe Hendry to Bill Goldberg as a way to get people to buy into our Patreon so they can hear the madness that you've just spouted. But continue. Hold on. Give me a second.
But I think it's kind of maybe a parable or something like that. But I'm just talking about like how the build, they got this guy on the rise and now they're actively sabotaging their own guy. And that's what they ultimately did to Goldberg, right? It took them a lot longer. They didn't do it on night one like they did to Joe Hendry. Like TNA did to Joe Hendry, but they have this organic star that they have created, and they decided to go ahead and fuck the thing up and blow the whole deal. Goldberg was such a phenomenon. And I know that he couldn't work in the ring, and he, didn't do all the moves that some of the other guys did, and he wasn't very fluid. He was very green. But guess what else he was? He was money. He had more charisma than anybody else in that freaking company. I'm telling, dude, like he had like that physical charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Like he very much, out of anybody in that company, he was like the one guy that you thought could actually kick somebody's ass.
That's
what I
true.
mean? Like he was just super intense, and the screaming and all the mannerisms that he did. He didn't cut good promos, but he didn't have to. He was such a big star without the promos.
I agree with that. And he was one of they're saying, well, Eric Bischoff couldn't make a star. That's bullshit. They made Goldberg.
They did.
I mean, like Goldberg was nothing in September 97 when he debuts and beats Hugh Morris. I remember watching it going, wow, that guy just won. Everybody did that. And within 3 months, he was over, right? Like the rise of Goldberg in 1998 is one of pro wrestling's great stories. And like, I've always found it interesting that people were like, the moment he lost, it was over for him. And I find that to be interesting because if you can't ever lose, then there's like no real stakes to anything. Right. I think he had to lose. I think the circumstances of what happened were the problem. Yeah. Like the fact that he lost to Kevin Nash for and then it was the story surrounding it that made it just awful.
Well, he lost to Kevin Nash, and they ended another Starrcade, 2 Starrcades in a row with a fuck finish, right? Which Starrcade's their biggest show of the year, and of course they decided to blow the main event again. But not only that, you go back in 3. So
96 Piper wins. Hogan beats Piper, or Piper beats Hogan, but we don't know it's a non-title match until after.
That is true. I remember Hogan beating Piper, Piper beating Hogan, but I thought that he won the championship, and they didn't explain it until afterwards that it was a non-title match.
We didn't know it was a non-title. They didn't make a big deal about it being a non-title match until it was over. And we were all like, what the fuck? So 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
I forget. I cannot remember what happened in Starrcade 99, like for the life of me, and I don't want to.
Starrcade 99 was I think it was that Brett and Goldberg or no? I don't remember Starrcade 99.
That was Starrcade 99.
And that was Goldberg concussing Brett, wasn't it?
Yeah, Brett, the end of Bret Hart's career. I don't remember what the finish was of that match, though.
Yeah.
All anybody remembers of that. All I remember, that was Vince Russo's NWO.
Yeah.
And
which we'll get into Russo on episode 3, but yeah. So again, like they gave everybody another screw job finish at the end of a Starrcade, at the end of the biggest pay-per-view of the year. But if you go back and you look at his title run, so this is how hot WCW was. They sold out the Georgia Dome with 40,000 people even before they announced Hogan and Goldberg was going to be for the world title in the main event. Like they had announced like locally they would be wrestling, but they didn't announce it until the Thursday Thunder before J.J. Dillon comes out and makes that big announcement. I remember going crazy when I saw that. I was so excited. I was such a big Goldberg fan. And then they go and they do that, and he wins the title, and he's like this big mega star. And then they go into Bash at the Beach the next month, and guess who he wrestles at Bash at the Beach?
Oh, who did he defend the title against at his first paper? I'm trying to remember. It's like a nobody.
It was Kurt Hennig.
That's right.
Kurt Hennig's one of
I
the
don't know.
greatest ever, but he wasn't a big star at that point. He was past his prime.
Not in
Not a
1998.
headline act, right? Hogan, and it was like Hogan and Rodman were the main event, right?
Hogan
Bash at the
and
Beach.
No,
It was Hogan
and
and Rodman versus DDP and Malone.
Yeah, that was Bash at the Beach. Yeah, because Hogan
Yeah.
and Leno was the main event at Road Wild.
Right. So then you go into August in Road Wild 98. Hogan's still in the main event against Jay Leno, and Bill Goldberg's defending the world title in a battle royal.
Yeah.
And then you get into September, right? You get into September. Goldberg's not even on the show.
The world champion.
Yeah.
the main event is the War Games.
Yes, with Ultimate Warrior like kind of fumbling around and barely able to move, setting up the big match with Hogan. You go to Halloween Havoc 98, Goldberg's best match of his career against Diamond Dallas Page.
That was the main event.
That was the main event, and I loved it.
Draw though, but it wasn't the draw. They didn't
Hogan
sell
and Warrior. Yeah.
one of the worst professional wrestling matches between two stars in history.
And then you go to November, War Games 3.
World
War 3. Sorry, World War 3. Goldberg's not even on that show. So there is no defending how they did Goldberg, and it was very clear. And I think Conan was saying, I felt like Conan is pretty honest in these shows. Conan was like, there was just so much jealousy. Nobody wanted to wrestle the guy. They want to lose to him. Mm-hmm. So everybody was trying to avoid him. And I'm just like, no, like he should have victories over Lex Luger, Randy Savage, the Chris Jericho match we all wanted. We ended up not getting it. Like that was supposed to be at War Games. We ended up not doing it.
The only guy that wanted to work with him was Chris Jericho, and they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, because Nash got in Goldberg's head. We're always pointing the finger at Eric Bischoff for killing WCW. I feel like a small pinky needs to be pointed at Kevin Nash.
Kevin Nash never should have had that much power to begin with.
No.
But Eric Bischoff allowed it.
Yes.
That's the problem. It goes back to Bischoff. All Bischoff had, because Vince would never have allowed it. Like when there were problems with the Clique, Vince bowed to them too. But I mean, like they all eventually left, and eventually Vince put everyone that wasn't named Shawn Michaels in their place eventually.
Yeah. I think that Kevin Nash's booking was atrocious. And of course, as soon as he gets the book, he books himself against Goldberg. And then of course they beat him. Look, I'm not saying Goldberg should have stayed undefeated forever, but he didn't beat anybody. Like he beat Hogan. They should have done the Hogan rematch at some point. They never did that.
Starrcade.
Yes.
That would have been a draw match.
Yeah. They should have built it to Starrcade. But they didn't do it because Hogan didn't want to lose to him again. He's like, I put him over once, and that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to still keep myself on top, despite the fact that I'm not the world heavyweight champion. We're going to give him the belt. Everybody's going to think that I'm this good guy. But what I'm really going to do is upstage him the entire time.
We should, as a fun experiment, we should call Muse about this and ask, we should rebook 1998, the late 1998 WCW. What do you do with Bill Goldberg? He's the champion. Let's say, I got a crazy idea. Let's say we want to make money with Bill Goldberg as the champion.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Well, I literally, like I just said, here's the problem.
Yeah.
I think they wanted to do some of the things that we would want to do, but they couldn't get anybody to do it because they didn't have the leadership skills to be able to get those guys to be put in those positions. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because Eric Bischoff was a failure as a leader. He just couldn't get guys to do what he wanted to do.
He had no problem throwing coffee in Eddie Guerrero. Like, if you were beneath him, Eric Bischoff had no problem leading. Like he's a complete, I'm gonna say he's pussy. Like that's a derogatory term, but I got nothing better to say about that guy. Like he let people bully him. He let people just run roughshod over him. He's a complete and total sis. Like he's a wuss. Like I've never had less respect for someone as a leader than Eric Bischoff. Like I would love to just say, if you had a chance to book 1998 WCW with Bill Goldberg, I probably shouldn't use that phrase, but I can't think of a better one. Like, I don't know what else. I'd love to hear what like you could do if you had the idea of actually building Bill Goldberg into something special. And then you also had Bret Hart just sitting there.
Yeah.
Just sitting there. Biggest star in wrestling the year before.
Yeah. They totally blew it with Bret. They blew it with Sting, you know? And it's like, one guy after another, they just continued to blow it with. And it was like, they had almost like They had so much good talent, and yet they still figured out a way to mess it up. They were on fire. They had 18 months of growth and profitability, like monster profits. Look, the Georgia Dome did over $900,000 gate. Today, that's probably like close to 2 million. You know what I mean? Like that's a huge gate. And then at the end of 1998, they did the TWA Dome, which actually broke the record in the Georgia Dome. They didn't have as many people, but they had a bigger gate. And then 2 weeks after that, they go back to the Georgia Dome for the Finger Poke of Doom show, and that had over 35,000 people, and that actually broke the all-time record for their gate, for WCW. They were on, and it's like, and then later that year, Bischoff gets fired, which is what we will get into on the next episode. But I think that this episode exposed Eric Bischoff as being an even bigger grifter and a liar than we already knew. It exposed Kevin Nash as to not knowing how to book a promotion, because Kevin Nash was like, there's no money in a babyface champion. The money's in the chase. And with certain babyfaces, that is true. I think that's true for some babyfaces, but not monster babyfaces, not big, strong, and powerful babyfaces. I think Goldberg should have been Bruno. He should have been Hogan. He should have been one of those guys.
Mike, I have a question for you. What was Kevin Nash in WWE?
The worst drawing champion of all time.
He was, but he was a monster babyface champion.
He was. Makes you think, right? Yeah. He very much just wanted to get rid of Goldberg because he wanted Goldberg's spot. And he wanted Goldberg out of the way because they didn't feel like he earned it. But guess what? Look, they say Goldberg's not a great wrestler. Well, you know what? A lot of guys weren't great wrestlers. Neither was Kevin Nash. But you know what? He could draw.
You know what's weird? Because they're the same. Kevin Nash shows up in WWF in May of 93, and he's Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. And in early 94, he gets the rocket strap. And by the end of 94, he's the freaking champion. There's not a lot of difference. There's not a lot of difference between Kevin Nash, Diesel, and Goldberg, right?
And why
their pushes are remarkably similar.
They are. Goldberg got his quicker, but yeah, very much similar. And you know what? Like a lot of people had to be put into positions to be able to get Kevin Nash over too. He beat Bob Backlund in like 30 seconds in Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? It's like, and
he
then
he laid waste to everybody that year.
Yeah,
he was it's very similar. He has the Intercontinental title that year. He has the tag titles with Shawn Michaels that year. Like Kevin Nash won everything in 1994. So for him to say these things about Goldberg, and then he has a year-long run in WWE as a babyface monster champion. What a fucking hypocrite.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think that he gets enough shit for how much damage he did to WCW when he was in charge. And really he should get more. But hey guys, we're going to go ahead and cut it off right here. That was enough talk of a WCW, Who Killed WCW episode 3. Stay tuned this weekend, and JD and I will release Who Killed WCW episode 3, which is all about bro. That scumbag, that grifter. He's back in our lives. Coming up next on Who Killed WCW episode 3. And until next time, mahalo.